Mario Party 9 marks a dramatic shift in the Mario Party series history. It's a notable turning point in a number of ways, most infamously that it was the first game that wasn't developed by its original developer, Hudson Soft, since Hudson was dissolved into Konami in 2012. Mario Party 9, while numerically in line with the rest of the games leading up to this point, is a complete left turn from the long-established formula, although this change doesn't completely come from nowhere. So, what inspired the team at ND Cube to change things up when they took the helm? And did it work in their favor? Well, welcome back to Mark's Rec Room, where today we're going to be talking about Mario Party 9, the most controversial road trip I've ever been on. Before we get on the road here and talk about the game itself, I think it's important to know who's driving this thing and why they were selected for the job. Mario Party 9 was developed by a second-party studio named ND Cube, whose name would later be changed to Nintendo Cube in September 2024. Originally founded in 2000 as a joint venture between Nintendo and Dentsu, ND Cube had not developed a ton of games in the 12 years leading up to Mario Party 9. Their output mostly consisted of simple simulators like Card Party and Pool Edge, and they also developed F-Zero Maximum Velocity for the Game Boy Advance, a pretty fun follow-up to the Super Nintendo original. However, the most prominent and important title that they developed was Wii Party, a Mii-based party game in the Wii series that I actually recently covered in a retrospective on this channel, so go check that out if you're interested. Wii Party is notable for lots of reasons. For one, it's a really great party game, but it was also developed by a team of Mario Party series veterans. You see, while ND Cube may be a new company developing Mario Party, the team working at ND Cube is partially composed of ex-Hudson Soft employees that had been working there since the very first Mario Party game. In fact, the president of ND Cube, Hidetoshi Endo, was actually previously the president at Hudson Soft. Several members of Mario Party 9's development team had also worked on previous Mario Party games at Hudson Soft a few years prior. To put things into perspective, I counted a grand total of 49 developers that were credited on Mario Party 8 that are also credited on Mario Party 9, not including character voices or special thanks. So even though there may be a different company name in the credits, a lot of the same crucial people are still working on this series post Hudson Soft, which is comforting. However, even though the team isn't 100% composed of ex-Hudson Soft employees, new talent has always been a critical part of the Mario Party series development process. In an Iwata Asks interview about Wii Party, Mario Party series director Shuichiro Nishia, coordinator Miyuki Hirose, and producers Hiroshi Sato and Atsushi Ikeda discussed how crucial it was to have new team members with fresh ideas to keep the Mario Party games releasing at a regular pace.
You've all been involved with the Mario Party series since early on. This game has always been packed full of minigames and has traditionally come out as a holiday title every year. What has been the secret to bringing out new installments in such a steady stream?
Speaking as one of the developers, I'd say we had a lot of ideas for minigames. We didn't use them all up at once, but said, let's use that idea next time, and kept a stock of ideas. A big factor was that every time one came out, new people would join the team. Like I did.
When new people join, they bring new ideas with them.
Bringing on new, talented people with fresh ideas to shake things up was always a key part of the development process for these games, which I think shows when you consider just how many mechanical changes were made in each new Mario Party that was released, especially as the series continued between console generations. Later in this interview, the team discusses getting into ruts with releasing new Mario Party games every year and how they aim to differentiate these games from one another.
But even with so many people joining, didn't you ever feel like you had fallen into a rut, making one almost every year like that?
Yeah, a lot.
At each juncture, in order to avoid a rut, we were trying to make big changes, like not using dice, and coming up with different rules.
But if you don't use dice, then some might say it's not Mario Party.
That's right. We'd always wanted to make Mario Party a game that families could enjoy together during the holidays, so we needed rules that would be easy for anyone to understand. Of course, we had to keep things fresh, but we wanted to preserve the basic form as well. Keeping it familiar and comfortable was important to us. Luckily, a new person came forward each time with a new idea to serve as the core and highlight of the game. I think we've been able to continue the series for so long because players could always say, this is a little different and new.
In other words, you placed importance on familiarity and comfort and didn't change the basic concept. But you added in something new each time so it wouldn't feel like the same old thing.
Yes, I think that's it.
This approach, as we've learned throughout this series looking back at the previous era of Mario Party, resulted in a lot of really great innovations and clever ideas that shook the formula up in interesting interesting ways, but also maybe led to abandoning ideas too early or unnecessarily changing some systems that worked well in the previous entry, in the interest of providing an experience that felt different from the last game in the series. Looking back at reviews of the classic Mario Party games at the time that they came out, I can't really blame the team for wanting to switch things up and provide experiences that felt new and sequel-worthy. Churning out a party game every year for a decade is difficult and can get very mundane. I'm very sympathetic to the team, and I'm frankly impressed by the amount of unique ideas that they came up with under that pressure to keep churning out new games, some of which wound up becoming completely unmatched in the party game genre. So why is this information so important? And how does this pertain to Mario Party 9? Well, as we move forward, I think it's important to note that experimentation, coming up with new ideas, and changing things, kind of for the sake of changing things, has always been a part of the Mario Party series since its very inception, and that's historically resulted in both good and bad outcomes. And, well, Mario Party 9 isn't that much different in that regard. Mario Party 9 makes a massive change to the Mario Party formula, but this time, instead of a shift in the item system or central gimmick, the change was made to the series' infrastructure, and this would result in one of the most controversial gameplay ideas that the series has ever seen: vehicular transportation. Yeah, so if you're unaware, instead of the 4 players moving around individually to hunt down stars, steal from one another, etc., Mario Party 9 instead crams everybody into a minivan and forces all players to move together on a linear board, taking turns rolling and piloting the party bus until you reach your destination, the ending of the board. Linear boards with a clear start and end aren't entirely foreign to Mario Party. This series has had a few linear boards at this point throughout multiple entries. The big structural change here is that the players are moving together across this board, instead of racing one another, and the linear boards of Mario Party's past didn't end at the finish line. Instead, they would reroute you back to the start of the board to continuously loop until the turn count is over. But here, there is no turn count. The board actually ends when you reach the finish line. This change has been contentious, to say the least, and the question on a lot of fans' minds at the time, and even today, has been: why? What inspired the team to rework the series' fundamental gameplay style? Well, in 2015, Shuichiro Nishia did an interview with Nintendo Life discussing Mario Party 10, alongside Junpei Horita, the producer for Mario Party 10 and coordinator for Mario Party 9. When asked about Mario Party 10's pace, and specifically why players are all in a car together, Nishia-san responded,
"In past installments, everyone would move separately through the board. As a result, the actions of the other players often didn't affect you. You could just look at the TV screen when it was your turn and during the minigames. In Mario Party 10, though, players move together in a car, so each player's actions will affect the others, meaning you'll need to keep an eye on the TV screen. This way, everyone's constantly involved, and we keep the flow of the game at a good pace."
We'll get back to this reasoning in a minute, but I think it's important to give one other key quote from the developers when it comes to their approach to party games in this era. In the Wii Party Iwata Asks interview, the team reminisces on the difficulties of making a party game in the Wii series. At the time, all of the games in the Wii series had been developed in-house at Nintendo as their flagship name-brand series of games, showcasing what their console and its controller could really do. If the team was going to use the name Wii Party, they really had to earn it, and that came with tons of challenges. For example, the Mii characters had strict brand standards, so the team couldn't create the same wacky and outlandish scenarios like they could with the Mario universe, which set extremely confining boundaries to what minigames or even board events could be included. The team also received some pretty honest feedback from the Wii Sports Resort team, particularly about the game's pace.
Since it was going to be released in the Wii series, we decided to have the development teams for Wii Sports Resort and Wii Fit Plus try it out and tell us openly what they thought.
Oh, I bet you got some pretty severe comments.
Yeah. To be honest, some of them were so severe that I was like, you don't have to be quite so harsh, you know. But it had been decided we were going to use the title Wii Party, so the team's motivation was pretty high. We were happy to be recognized as a part of the Wii series, so while we had to endure some pretty tough criticism, our attitude was, let's fix everything they mentioned.
The biggest thing was tempo. In the race game, for example, before it starts, you see an overview of the course in about 5 seconds, and then there was a startup sequence. But for people playing over and over again,
it's like, hurry up and let me play.
Exactly. That's just one example, but there were problems with tempo all over the place. The Wii Sports Resort team didn't pull any punches in pointing them all out.
When it comes to pacing, the Wii Sports Resort team may be the most sensitive group of individuals at Nintendo. Since you were bringing out your game as part of the Wii series, they gave it a thorough check and told you what should be fixed.
Yeah, we were grateful for that.
The crushing weight of expectations to meet the Wii Series Gold standard forced the team to really think outside of the box, to the point where they started to have a bit of a philosophical crisis, asking themselves, well, what does the word party truly mean?
First, we decided to thoroughly readdress the basic question of what is a party?
A home party, a birthday party. The more we thought about the various kinds of parties, the more we got bogged down. We really worried over it.
At first, we had tentatively been calling Mario Party for the Nintendo 64 by the name of Mario Board. In the end, we released it as Mario Party. Just like the name indicates, it consists of mini-games playable on board games.
So, rather than party games, you had board games in mind.
That's right, that was our original departure point. So we were focused on playing board games and mini-games on the television screen. But we thought once again about what a party is, and as a result, we realized parties are about having a good time together with other people. We decided to put in whatever we could think of, to a level surpassing any other product in the world. And the very last thing we thought of was play using the Wii Remote controller. We wondered about, rather than playing on the TV screen, playing on this side of the screen, using the room itself as a play space.
This resulted in House Party and Wii Party, a mode where you use the environment as the play space, hiding Wii Remotes around the room for other players to find, or passing a Wii Remote from person to person, trying to prevent it from tilting too much. This all culminated in a party game that felt remarkably different than anything else that was available at that time, and the developers felt the same. They moved away from the parties that they knew that were centered around a board game, and instead decided to challenge that tradition and create a party game that offers a ton of unique modes that utilize interactions between players in new and creative ways. All of this is incredibly illuminating when looking at the differences between the tried and true Mario Party formula and Wii Party's approach to party game content. However, as the team wrapped up that Wii Party interview, Iwata and Ikeda's closing remarks are some of the most valuable insights into the shift that we have gotten from any party game developer interview to date.
When I see the TV ads of the game, which simply showed how the 5 members of Arashi had naturally enjoyed playing Wii Party, I feel like we have redefined party games and established a new standard. So I hope everyone will play this game for a long time to come.
I do too. I hope people will play Wii Party for years to come as the new standard in party game software.
A new standard in party games. That right there is our answer. Wii Party is, in its developers' eyes, the new standard in party games. Up until this point, this very team of developers had been forging the previous standard of party games with Mario Party and its board gameplay as the key focus. Yes, there were bonus modes and extras to partake in that deviated from the main party mode, but the board gameplay was always the meat and potatoes of the party game experience. But now, the focus isn't on one particular type of gameplay, but instead, it's about creating novel social experiences with quick tempo and expansive variety for different situations. And it's hard to deny that this worked for Wii Party. The game sold like hotcakes, outselling both Mario Parties on the Wii. So they must have struck some sort of gold here that was really resonating with party game enjoyers. So with this game being such a success financially, and with the team mentioning that Mario Party had run into many ruts before, when the task came to develop a new Mario Party game after the series took the longest hiatus it had ever taken since its creation, the team brought over their experience and fresh ideas to try to breathe new life into the Mario Party series. However, they couldn't just abandon everything that the series had built up until that point. They had to find a way to marry the old standards and expectations that came with the Mario Party brand and the new standard that they created with Wii Party. And the result completely fumbles on both fronts. So, I think I've buried the lead enough with my thoughts on Mario Party 9's car gameplay. I think it's one of the worst iterations of Mario Party gameplay to date, and that is by no means a hot take. Just search Mario Party 9 on any search engine and you'll find countless reviews and rants that call this gameplay style virtually every synonym for boring and terrible in existence. And, to be honest, I'm not really interested in just adding another car onto this 12-year-long pileup, ignoring its potential merits, and moving on without critically explaining why I don't like this new style of gameplay. I think that would be really redundant and short-sighted. Mario Party 9 has seen a surge in popularity lately, and I think it's unfair to the folks that really enjoy this game to simply write off this gameplay style as different and therefore bad. Instead, it's important to critically engage and break down why I think this car gameplay doesn't work, especially within the Mario Party series, and what it was about the previous games that worked so much better. In the Hudson-era Mario Party games, which I'm going to call classic Mario Party for the sake of brevity, players made decisions on two levels, macro and micro. Decisions on a micro level have consequences that affect you immediately. For example, if I'm at a junction with 2 spaces remaining, if I choose to go to the left, I'll land on a blue space and gain 3 coins. But if I go to the right, I'll land on a Bowser space and lose something. Maybe you'll also pass an item along the way, or maybe you should use an item like the metal mushroom to avoid a roadblock that's directly ahead of you. However, these decisions also feed into a much larger macro strategy that considers the goals that you work towards over multiple turns. While you're probably thinking, well, most of the time you're probably just trying to get to the star, right? You would be right, but only sometimes. Mario Party, or at least its best iterations, will encourage players to rush towards the star since that is your primary objective, but also present several opportunities where players may be encouraged to depart from the route to the star in favor of another strategy. For example, suppose you have lots of coins and another player is leading significantly in stars or is on a faster route to the star than you. In that case, you may choose to opt instead to head towards the nearest Boo Hut to steal a star since you gain and your opponent loses, swinging your net gain more than a simple star purchase would. As you get into specific boards with different mechanics, these different macro decision options expand greatly as you consider multi-turn events and your opponent's movements as you concoct your long-term strategies. So you might wait to go to the star space in fair square and choose the long way around because nighttime is coming up in a few turns and the star might be considerably cheaper. You might choose to go out of your way to invest in a hotel in Koopa's Tycoon Town that is owned by a player who is threatening you in that moment. Or you might choose to invest more into a hotel that you already own to increase its value and secure stars that are more difficult to steal. Maybe you go the complete opposite direction of the star in Bowser's Enchanted Inferno because Bowser time is coming up and you can set yourself up to be in a better position to nab the star once it respawns and avoid Bowser sinking the island with you on it. I think you get the idea. Classic Mario Party is at its best when players are making meaningful choices that affect them not just in the short term, but also in the long term across multiple turns. While yes, those immediate micro decisions of what space am I about to land on? Should I pass by this orb space? And should I use my bolo candy to steal coins from this opponent I pass are important. Sometimes it might not be bad to tank a decision with a negative effect in the short term, like landing on a red space or paying a toll, if it is necessary to benefit your long-term macro strategy. When players are keeping an eye on each of their competitors and their moves, their item purchases, and their long-term strategies, that's when Mario Party is at its absolute best, because all of these players are making meaningful choices that give them agency but have to consider probability, which makes for consistently engaging board gameplay. So, when Mario Party 9 rolled around and removed the player's independent movement, it also removed virtually all macro decision making along with it. Now, with all players crammed into one vehicle heading in one direction, players' focus is generally shifted from that macro level to almost exclusively a micro level. Since you're only piloting the car when it's your turn, that means that you are not in control of your positioning on the board for 3 out of every 4 rolls. Thinking back to what Nishia-san said about the previous entries of Mario Party in that Nintendo Life interview,
in past installments, everyone would move separately through the board. As a result, the actions of the other players often didn't affect you. You could just look at the TV screen when it was your turn and during the minigames.
I can't help but feel that this criticism is more applicable to Mario Party 9 than it ever was for any of the classic Mario Party games. While yes, other players' turns may not always directly affect you, watching the purchases, positioning, and strategies of the other players is crucial in classic Mario Party if you're going to come out on top. They're making moves that are going to affect you because they might be heading towards a Boo to steal from you, or about to purchase a star and move it. And this idea that the other players are checked out while someone else is taking their turn couldn't be further further from the truth. However, in Mario Party 9, it's so much easier to check out when it's not your turn because the potential for big long-term strategies is diminished. When you roll, you're most likely only concerned with what's within rolling distance ahead of you, whether that's the potential to pass by some mini-stars, maybe land on a specific space, or put the person who rolls after you in a position to lose some mini-stars, which is probably the closest thing that this game gets to any kind of macro decision making. On most boards, there are at least 2 or 3 junctions that often boil down to a good path with positive spaces or a bad path with negative spaces. So the captain at that time has a decision. Do I want something good to happen to me or something bad to maybe happen to somebody else? And usually this decision is made for them because of what their current role is. If you rolled enough to pass by some mini stars or land on something good, you'll probably go down the good path. If you didn't, you'll probably choose the bad path to prevent an opponent from gaining. These junctions, while they seem to provide an opportunity for a decision, often wind up becoming incredibly vapid options with very clear-cut answers that take any hope of strategy away from the player. But again, only the captain at that time gets to make that decision, and these junctions are often so short that the other 2 players that are not currently rolling or up next might not even be affected by this decision at all. In some of my previous retrospectives on this series, I came down pretty hard on single-player minigames because I felt that it halted the flow of the game to stop everything and force 3 players to all watch one person play a minigame that likely barely affects the rest of them. Mario Party 9's board gameplay falls into this same pitfall, because lots of times the decisions the captain is making, the spaces that they're landing on, or the items that they're using barely impact any of the other players at all. It's entirely plausible that at least 1 player per round will go through an entire game without choosing a single path. They're essentially just rolling dice and hoping for a good number with no other real tangible input beyond that. There's no point in being concerned about what happened when you weren't in control of the car. Almost none of that affects you. There's no point in being concerned about where you're going. The road only goes one way, and you'll be in a totally different section of the board by the time it's your turn again. You're only in control of your positioning 25% of the time, so there's no room for you to plan things ahead, and instead, your focus shifts to just hoping that you land on something good when it's your turn, which removes so much player agency and, along with it, player engagement. When talking about Mario Party 9 and its changes to your decision-making opportunities, I think that it's also important to back up a bit and talk about the role that mini-stars play here as your sole win condition. The traditional star and coin system from classic Mario Party is gone, and in its place, a singular currency in the form of mini-stars. The idea is that they're somewhere in between stars and coins in the value to volatility scale. Ideally, they're not as volatile as classic coins because they're your win condition, but they aren't as secure and game-changing as stars because players aren't spending anything to purchase them. They're simply passing them on the board or winning them in mini-games. Rolling stars and coins into a singular currency does make things simpler and easier to understand, but that comes at the cost of, surprise surprise, decision making. Coins weren't just used to purchase stars, they were also used to steal stars, purchase items, pay tolls, wager in duels, and so much more. The whole point of them being a secondary currency was to give the player opportunities to make decisions on how they spend their money. But there is no situation where spending your only win condition for the return of something like an item would ever make any sense. So all of those mechanics are just not possible in Mario Party 9. On the other side of that coin, stars were a fantastic system because each star purchase is impactful and typically marks a large sway in the standings of a game. Stars are secure, getting one is difficult and competitive, and losing one is a punishing, devastating loss. However, you can't have the impact of a star without the juxtaposition of the cost of spending coins to get one. Making stars free or worth fewer coins cheapens their impact on the game's standings. So ideally, if the star is to ever be worth fewer coins, it would only be for a brief period, like in Fair Square or Toadette's Music Room, to add in the opportunity cost of purchasing a star that isn't as cheap as it could be in a few turns or so. Mini stars cannot have that same effect because so many are given out throughout the course of the game, so an opponent gaining 3 or 5 mini stars or even winning a mini game is treated like an impactful event. But in practice, its effects on the standings feel negligible. Mini-stars attempt to be both coins and stars rolled into one nice and neat currency that makes it really easy to tell who's in the lead and make players feel like they're always in the game. But they fail to match the flexibility of coins and the impact of stars and leave the entire game and its win conditions feeling dull and more random than ever before. This also affects minigames and how they're worked into the experience. You see, one simple mechanic that I think Mario Party had kind of taken for granted was the flow of minigames and board turns. After all of the players roll, they play a minigame, typically for 10 coins. This worked really well on a number of levels. Number one, minigames are probably the portion of Mario Party that is the most engaging and memorable, so getting to play them on a regular basis is ideal. Number two, the 10 coins that are typically rewarded in the minigame are a good, reliable, but not overpowered injection of money into the game's economy. This keeps everybody in the running to be able to buy the items and stars that they want to buy, and gives players direct opportunity to compete with other players to try to prevent them from getting the coins that they need. Finally, number three, minigames provided a really good bookend for turns that kept the pace going strong and gave players a clear indicator of the game's progression. Mario Party 9, due to the mini-star system, had to revamp this entirely. If minigames were played at the end of every turn, that would massively break the pace of the game and would overvalue minigames as a victory objective, which would remove the anybody can win feel that this game wants to have so badly. So instead, minigames are only played when a minigame space is landed on, or if a player happens to randomly find one in an item box. This leads to a kind of weird dynamic where you could either play a minigame every roll, or you could not play a minigame for several rolls until the game decides to arbitrarily give you one. This finding a minigame in an item box mechanic is so clunky. It essentially feels like a band-aid solution for the likely occurrence where players don't play a minigame for several turns. We'll talk about the different types of minigames shortly once we zoom in closer on the boards, but overall the handling of minigames in Mario Party 9 is odd, and I think that this is a key example of how this new tempo-emphasizing approach to party games worked for Wii Party, but doesn't really work in Mario Party 9. You see, Wii Party's board game Island Mode is also a linear game board with a heavy emphasis on luck and racing to the end, but it works because it centers itself around minigames, more like a minigame mode. Minigames note the start of every turn, and your performance in the minigame determines when you roll and what kind of dice you roll, which in turn greatly increases your chances of winning the game. Of course, there's luck elements that balance this out, but this mode is essentially built around the idea that winning minigames is your ultimate clear condition. There's no currency, all space events are centered around sending players forwards or backwards in position, because at the end of the day, winning more minigames means more opportunities to roll high, which means more opportunities to outpace your opponents. This mode doesn't pretend to be a Mario Party style board game with strategy and decisions. It's very upfront about the fact that it's a simple, straightforward mode that's just about winning minigames and levels the playing field a bit with luck-based dice rolls. However, Mario Party 9 tries to marry these two diametrically opposed ideals into a board gameplay style that de-emphasizes decisions and macro strategy, but also nerfs the impact of minigames to avoid letting skilled players gain too much of an advantage. It's trying to mix oil and water here, and in the process of doing so, it winds up losing the strategic richness of Mario Party and the punchiness and focus of Board Game Island. So, while we're on the subject of the mechanics of Mario Party 9's board gameplay, I think it's important that we go over the different space types that this game has. Since the board mechanics have been completely reworked, the spaces also had to be reworked to fit this new style of gameplay. Starting with some traditional space types, green spaces do nothing. Like, actually nothing. Blue spaces will give the player a dice block and will sometimes give the player a mini-star or two as well, or initiate a minigame like we covered earlier. The happening spaces are also back, causing a board-specific event to occur. However, there are also lucky and unlucky spaces, which will cause an event where players will gain or lose mini-stars. Most will involve you going down a pipe and rolling to see what you get, which takes way longer than it needs to, but these spaces can also be in front of a toad house where the player will have to watch some cards shuffle and pick two rewards, either some mini-stars and or a dice block. There are also some board-specific events, which we'll discuss individually once we go over the boards. Next, we have dash spaces and back spaces, which will do exactly what you think they'll do. You'll roll again and move forward or backward that number of spaces, allowing players to potentially double dip on a mini-star pickup or get one that's further out of reach. Next, we have the shuffle space, which shuffles the turn order. This event is kind of neat, but could also result in a player not getting to roll for a while, which is a fast track to boredom. Next is the spin space, where players will roll a roulette and cause a random event to occur, typically benefiting the player who landed here. It's pretty cool. This can be a very impactful space, so it's honestly worth worth it to try to slow roll onto one of these if it's within arm's reach. Finally, we have Bowser spaces, which are essentially the opposite of spin spaces, where players have the potential to lose lots of mini-stars through events like a Bowser Revolution, a battle for half of everybody's mini-stars, or, my favorite, a reverse minigame, where Bowser will award 10 mini-stars to the player who comes in last in the minigame. This is a really cute challenge that changes the way that you play the minigame and will have each player trying to force their opponents to win before them. It's a really cool idea, and I'm surprised that the series has never done this before. My only critique here is that there are only 4 minigames that can be selected for this mode. I honestly wish that you could try this in a separate minigame mode or something with a larger selection, because it's that fun. It's a shame that this event is kind of rare though. Overall, the Bowser space is punishing and threatening, which I really like. It's one of the few events in the game that I think genuinely puts players on edge. Moving on to minigame spaces, the following spaces will initiate their corresponding minigame type, whether that's free-for-all, one versus rivals, Bowser Jr., or battle spaces. One versus rivals is called that because you can actually play Mario Party 9 with 2, 3, or 4 players. You're no longer required to have 4 players and fill the gaps with CPUs, which is honestly really neat. So if you're playing with 3 total players, 1 versus 3 minigames become 1 versus 2 minigames. Bowser Jr. spaces likely function differently than you'd expect. Instead of wreaking havoc, Bowser Jr. challenges the captain with a teammate chosen at random to a Bowser Jr. minigame, where they have to team up against him. If the players win, they get 5 mini-stars apiece, but if they lose 5 mini-stars apiece. However, if you're playing with anybody over the age of 5, this space essentially means that both players get 5 free mini-stars because these mini-games are easy. Like, insultingly easy. So unless if your teammate sabotages you, or if you're in the other room making a snack throughout the entirety of the minigame, you'll likely never lose a Bowser Jr. minigame. Battle spaces are a little bit different than in previous entries. In most cases, Hammer Bro shows up and takes 3 mini-stars from each player, then will give 50% or 6 mini-stars to first place, 33% or 4 mini-stars to second place, and 17% or 2 mini-stars to third place. This makes the battle minigames generally inconsequential, since getting first place is only gaining 3 mini-stars and last place is only losing 3 mini-stars, and the other 2 places are only gaining and losing 1 more mini-star than they put into the pot. However, occasionally, Fire Bro will show up and host the battle minigame, and when he does, he takes 10 from the player who comes in last and distributes them amongst the players with a similar 50, 30, 20% split. This is much more interesting because it encourages players to bully the current winner into coming in last, so that they lose a good amount of mini-stars and the other players gain. If Fire Bro was on this space more, it would be much more impactful and interesting. These spaces are all fine and make sense, but there's one specific space missing here. Where's the duel space? Duels would have been a really great addition to Mario Party 9 since you're already rolling the win condition into one volatile currency. Why not give players the ability to wager their mini-stars against another player in a skill-based minigame to give the players a bit more skill input? I know the reason that duels weren't included was likely that they would tip the scales too much towards experienced players since they could wipe out another player's mini-star count in a single minigame, but there are ways to circumvent this by limiting how much can be wagered or even using something like the Wheel of Whimsy to make the reward luck-based. It feels like a serious missed opportunity to not have duels at all when wagering mini-stars offers a really great option to add some impactful tension between the players. Finally, there are 2 more universal spaces, the boss space and the captain event space. Here, the car will stop and initiate either a boss minigame or a captain event. Boss minigames will occur at the midpoint and at the end of each board. Here, all of the players will work together in a cooperative minigame to defeat a boss, but they also want to score more points than their competitors by doing more damage to the boss to get a bigger pot of mini-stars at the end of the minigame. The payouts for these minigames are the most impactful throughout the game, too. First place at the mid-boss will net you 10 mini-stars, while the final boss will net you 15. These minigames are honestly really fun challenges. They encourage you to compete with the other players to defeat the boss together, but for you to do the most of the work so you can get the highest score. It's a really clever idea that works out into some really fun minigames. I just have 2 problems with the bosses and their implementation. Number 1, the final attack bonus, and number 2, the captain bonus. The final attack bonus is awarded to the player that deals the final hit to the boss, giving them an additional 3 points in most minigames. The problem with this is that it is just way too impactful in some minigames. Take this one for example. I'm down 6 points compared to the other players, then all of a sudden I hit the boss with a 3-point bomb, get the final attack bonus, and boom, I'm in first place. It just enables too many lame strategies that encourage playing for the final attack bonus rather than competing throughout the entire minigame. This isn't the case for all boss minigames, but it does determine the outcome of a good amount of them, which sucks. Second, the captain bonus awards the player who landed on the boss space an additional bonus on top of their payout for their performance. If the player gets third or fourth, it doesn't mean much, but it can award the captain with an additional 8 bonus stars in the final boss if they come in first, which is more than second place gets. This is just too impactful. I'm not against awarding the player who lands here with additional mini stars, but this payout is just a little too impactful for just being the captain when you reach this point on the board. Honestly, getting to choose the minigame, except for 2 boards, is already a really good advantage to where I'd argue that you don't have to give anything to the captain at all. Boss minigames are an honestly really cool idea, and overall I do like their inclusion here, but a few changes would have made them even better. Comparatively, you have the captain event, where the player who stops here will be forced to pilot a little event where all players have the opportunity to gain mini stars. These events vary from board to board, but in most instances, the captain will be assigning the players to a lane or choosing the order in which they roll. We'll talk about each event in specifics when we get to the boards themselves, but in general, these events are a neat idea, but fall into the same pitfall as single-player minigames. They're really boring for everyone who isn't the captain. The captain is the one who gets to make all of the fun and interesting decisions here, while the other players either roll the dice or just sit there waiting for the outcome. I respect what they were going for. I like the idea of an interactive board event that affects all players and their standings in an interesting way, while giving one player a lot of power to wield and potentially misuse. However, in execution, these events are not that interesting strategically, drag on for way too long, and bring the pace of the game to a screeching halt. Before we move on to discuss each board and its events at greater depth individually, I think it's also important to discuss items first. Mario Party 9 ditches the item systems from the previous games for obvious reasons, and instead uses the special dice block system. There are 5 different special dice blocks, each of which will change the possible numbers that you can roll. There are the 1, 2, 3 dice block and the 4, 5, 6 dice blocks, which will essentially fix your dice to roll the upper half or the lower half of the standard dice block. There's the 0 to 1 dice block, which will only let you roll a 1 or a 0. There's also the 1 through 10 dice block, which will increase your maximum roll amount. And finally, there's the slow dice block, the best dice block in the game by a wide margin. Similar to the sluggish shroom orb from Mario Party 6 and 7 and the slow go candy from 8, this block allows you to essentially choose the number that you want to roll from 1 to 6. Generally, this dice block system works well with the board gameplay of Mario Party 9. Since the spaces you land on and the things that you pass while it's your turn are what essentially determines the game, these dice blocks mesh well with the board gameplay to increase your likelihood of landing on a space or passing by an event that you want, or prevent you from hitting or passing by something that you don't. It works well enough, but I have 2 key problems with this system. Number 1, the items that you get are mostly decided at random, and 2, the impact that you have on other players when you use items is minimal at best. The mini star system rears its ugly head again here because since there's no secondary currency like coins, it would never make sense to spend your sole win objective on something like an item. So all dice blocks are given out almost entirely at random, with the one exception being toad houses. Again, this strips away a lot of player input and decision making because you no longer choose to purchase items that help you with whatever situation you're currently in. At least in Mario Party 5, a game where all items are also given out at random, every item had the flexibility of being able to be thrown onto a space or used on yourself. While not my favorite item system in the series for a lot of reasons, at least this system forces you to pay to use capsules on yourself or allows you to create more interesting spaces on the board for free by throwing them. In Mario Party 9, the items cannot have the same level of depth and usage, so instead of giving items value and cost correlated to their power, we've got a system where all you can do is cross your fingers and hope for something useful. Also, these items barely affect the other players players, so while you're opening up that present with a dice block, the rest of the players likely do not care at all about what's in the box. Now, you could argue that the special dice blocks do affect the other players in the sense that if you use a 0 to 1 dice block right in front of a clump of mini stars, that directly affects the other players because then you're forcing somebody else to roll into them. And I definitely agree that this is where this item system is at its best, and some of the best board mechanics that we'll get into later do offer these sorts of moments. However, the stars have to align to pull these moments off because you have to not only land on the right space to get an item, you have to roll the correct item that you need to pull off your strategy, and then you also have to be within striking distance and the specific turn position to set this up in the first place. It's very situational and reliant on a specific domino chain of events, as opposed to item systems of the past where you could choose to purchase a specific item with a plan in mind and the ability to execute it reliably. So, most of the time, these items will be used to increase your chances of landing on or passing by something good, and will barely affect the other players, if it even affects them at all. I honestly think that this game needed some offensive items like poison mushrooms or something that you could use directly onto another player to give a little bit more of a competitive spirit to the game. The special dice block item system isn't bad in a functional sense. It works within the context of Mario Party 9's revamped board gameplay, but it's the series' most bland and uninteresting item system by a pretty considerable margin. Overall, the changes to the board gameplay in Mario Party 9 certainly try to achieve the developer's goal to bring the new Wii Party standard of party games over to the Mario Party series, but this is often to this game's detriment. It certainly speeds up the tempo of the board gameplay. Boards often take around half the time of the traditional 20-turn game of Mario Party, but in that process of ironing out Mario Party's slower, rougher edges, Mario Party 9 winds up burning holes into the very fabric of what Mario Party was at a fundamental level. Instead of the decision-based, high-stakes board gameplay of classic Mario Party, or the punchy, minigame-focused gameplay of Wii Party, Mario Party 9 achieves none of this by trying to achieve all of it. It removes everything that worked from both of these standards and combines the crummy parts. So what you get is a luck-filled road trip where you and a few other players are essentially just rolling dice hoping for good numbers, while the game hurries you to your destination, blazing you past any semblance of interesting interactivity you might have with the board or the other players. Mario Party 9's car gameplay has its moments, but it provides the worst of both worlds that it's trying to collide. However, some of its boards do a better job of highlighting the car's gameplay merits than others, so let's delve into each individual board and evaluate them in greater detail. Mario Party 9 has 7 boards available for us to check out: Toad Road, Bob-omb Factory, Boo's Horror Castle, Blooper Beach, Magma Mine, Bowser Station, and DK's Jungle Ruins. These boards aren't tied together by any particular theme, and their locations are kind of bland, honestly. However, this might have been more of an issue with the Mario series in general during this era rather than just with this game. However, I appreciate that we get more than the standard 6 boards. There's a lot to dive into here, so let's chat about these boards from worst to best. DK's Jungle Ruins sucks so bad. It barely even qualifies as a board. Rules Land has a more interesting layout. DK's Jungle Ruins is a circular board where you'll make 2 laps and try to collect bananas instead of mini stars. This board's mechanic is that if you land on the exclusive DK space, the bananas on the board will all hover above you and rotate in a circle. You will then time your jump and collect several of these, but this also has the secondary effect of changing the placement of bananas and Z bananas, yes, that's really what they're called, on the board. This is a neat idea and can lead to some interesting moments where players will try to screw over other players by setting them up to collect a row of Z bananas, but it often leads to the bananas shuffling around a lot, so things feel very random. There are also 2 lucky spaces on this board. On the left-hand side, you'll participate in a challenge where you mash the A button and fling yourself to get some bananas, and on the right-hand side is a really easy timing challenge. The captain event is also fairly simple. It's a brief shell game where the captain will assign players to the barrels and you should just hope for something good. It's a fairly easy shell game. I don't really know how you would lose track of the— Hey, Diddy Kong, down in front! The mini boss on this stage will always be Diddy, where you'll play a simple barrel blast minigame that inflates the economy pretty drastically. On the second lap, the barrel shuffling event reactivates, now also including a barrel with Z bananas. It's a fine event or whatever, but it's still pretty easy and kind of— Oh, you mother! Finally, when you get to the end of the second lap, you'll play a Donkey Kong minigame that's just kind of okay. It's a bit luck-based, but it's fun enough. Overall, this board is just weak. It feels a little unfair to call this the worst board in the game because it's kind of obviously a bonus board thrown in as a little extra and isn't on the same level of depth as the other boards. It's only 27 spaces, so it's hard to really judge it against the rest of the boards in the game that are exponentially larger in size and scope. It's just a nothing burger board with a decent theme. Bob-omb Factory certainly does a great job of making you feel like you're in a factory. This board is filled with a lot of conveyor belts and moving platforms that bring that feeling of being on an assembly line, and that is not a good thing. This board opens up to this single section of snaking spaces with several happening spaces interspersed throughout the path. If you hit one of the happenings towards the bottom of the paths, you'll be carried forward a section, but if you hit one of the ones on the top, you'll be sent backwards. This section of the map is such a non-starter. Sending you backwards does almost nothing in terms of the standings since the game just started, and there are no lucky or unlucky spaces on this part of the board, so what do you really have to look forward to by going backwards? The only thing that these spaces do is make you retread the same ground, potentially over and over again, murdering the pace of the game before it even gets out of first gear. Once you get past the mini-boss, the board finally opens up and shows some promise. You then see this huge strip of two parallel paths with a conveyor belt before them, one of which is obviously a good path and the other is a bad path. The conveyor belt will swap directions every turn before you get on it, and once you get on a path, you're essentially locked to that path unless if somebody lands on a happening space that takes you to the other line. I would like this if it was a choice that the captain could make that would put a lot of power into their hands, but whatever, it's fine. The mechanic here that I actually really like is the bob-omb. At the beginning of this area, a bob-omb will be dropped onto your car. After your car travels over the designated number of spaces, the bob-omb will explode, taking half of the captain's mini-stars. I like this because it's one of the few instances in this game where players need to be conscious of the other player's rolls and use dice blocks to increase the chances that the bomb explodes on one of their competitors. Now, obviously, that's reliant on the fact that you'd be lucky enough to have a dice block that's useful in that moment, but still, it's an interesting idea with a pretty big punishment for the loser. Eventually, you'll roll up to the side-by-side zone, this board's captain event. Here, the captain assigns players to lanes and then all players will take turns rolling. There are mini stars along the path, but if the players hit a happening space, the mini stars will move one lane to the left. This captain event, unsurprisingly, is drab and lifeless. You'll take turns watching each other roll and hope that you happen to run into something good. There's like zero player input here and doesn't feel like an event in all honesty. Gameplay wise, the captain is barely making any meaningful decisions here and the results are very luck based. It's just plain bad. After this section, there isn't too much more of the board either. There's another bob-omb and well, that's it, really. Playing Bob-omb Factory feels like clocking into work on a Monday. It's flavorless, spins its tires for far too long in the beginning, and lacks any branching paths for even the slightest bit of decision making. Bowser Station is a board that conceptually sounds cool, but functionally falls apart very fast. This is another straight line board with no junctions at all and revolves around a borrowed mechanic from Wii Party's spin-off mode. At the center of the board is a giant jackpot machine with a bunch of mini stars just waiting to be collected. There are a variety of spaces around the board that will add mini stars to the pot, and you can win the jackpot by either landing on a lucky space or by winning the mini game. This all likely sounds very familiar if you played Wii Party's spin-off mode, and it makes for a really neat concept for a Mario Party board. One that honestly works really well with the whole single currency mechanic. However, this board's layout and additional events hamper this mechanic and prevent it from being as fun or as interesting as it could have been. The problem here is that you will only play a mini game for the jackpot when 20 mini stars have been added to the jackpot, and this will automatically occur once you reach this threshold. You see, what made Wii Party spin-off a novel, if not slightly luck-heavy mode, was that the jackpot had seemingly no ceiling, and when you land on a minigame space with a huge jackpot, the stakes felt incredibly high and the room would get incredibly tense. Sure, this maybe overvalues a single minigame in the grand scheme of things, but this also gives the game that win big feel that makes spin-off tense and fun to play. And then when somebody won that huge jackpot, it turned everybody in the room against them. The low ceiling for the jackpot minigame in Bowser Station makes the reward feel less like a huge game changer once a minigame is played. I think that this would have been more fun if the jackpot had either no cap or if the cap was raised to 40 or 50 mini stars, and that there were more opportunities to add mini stars to the pot and for the captain to lose mini stars and add them to the pot, like the half spaces in spin-off. Then, when a player lands on a jackpot minigame space or when they get a lucky space and get awarded the huge pot, the stakes raise exponentially and put everybody on edge. While yes, this does make this board way more hectic and unpredictable, it would really commit to that feeling that every turn, every dice roll runs the risk of knocking your house of cards down, which adds to the intensity and tension that would make this board so much more fun. If you're going to make a board around a jackpot mechanic, make it so that jackpot means something and that players' strategies really need to center around it, instead of kneecapping the mechanic to the point where winning a boss minigame is more impactful. This board also has three, count 'em, three captain events. The first captain event has the players roll the dice to set a heart dice block, and the captain will roll 3 times. If the captain matches another player's color, they will receive 2 mini stars apiece. Sometimes Bowser Jr. will come through and force all of the players to roll their dice again, then give 2 mini stars to anybody he ties. This is fine, if not a bit boring and drawn out, since the 3 other players essentially roll a dice block and then do nothing for a little while. Next, the second captain event is this bingo colony, where players will take a turn rolling a 1 through 10 dice block until a player gets a bingo, where they will receive all of the mini stars in the bingo, or mini stars if Bowser crashes the party. The captain decides which player rolls next, which is honestly pretty interesting for them, as you're trying to put yourself in a position to roll when a bingo is likely, but you don't want to hold off on rolling for too long and give somebody else a window to win. And this entire strategy is flipped on its head if Bowser intervenes. It's cool, but my critique here is that, again, this is really boring for the other players and drags on for forever, while you just watch each other roll. Finally, the third captain event is a race of sorts, where the captain will assign players to different lanes. The 2 longer lanes have mini stars on them, and all but the shortest lane have dash spaces on them to even the playing field. If you make it to the end before the other players, you'll get rewarded with 10 mini stars, but multiple players can win at the same time, so some competitive edge is removed here. I feel like only one player should really win this 10 mini star pot. Maybe if 2 players tie, whoever rolled the largest number should win the pot. Oh yeah, and sometimes Bowser shows up and forces the player in front to roll a 0 to 1 dice block or a 1 2 3 dice block. Wowie. These captain events are honestly way too frequent and really harm the board's flow. This board has 59 spaces, which is roughly half the size of the other boards in the game, minus DK's Jungle Ruins, and to add an event that stops players dead in their tracks every 10 spaces is really detrimental to the game's tempo. It also honestly hurts the jackpot mechanic as well. I feel like this board would be a lot better if it was doubled in size and the captain events could be more spread out. This way, the jackpot mechanic has more room to breathe and impact the standings, while the captain events pop in every now and then to alleviate the players from the chaos and give the captain at the time some direct input into whether they get mini stars or not. Finally, the mini boss and boss minigames are always Bowser Jr. and Bowser, respectively, and they're some of the weakest boss minigames in my opinion. Bowser's block battle has its moments. It's kind of a luck minigame where you're trying to scramble to throw these dice to land on your face, and then Bowser's dice will turn into attacks that you have to dodge, which is pretty fun, albeit very luck heavy. But Bowser Jr. Breakdown is probably the worst boss minigame in the game. It's such a boring slog of just rolling dice one by one, hoping that you get the magic number to be able to do damage to him. And it's so easy for one player to hit the 15 and then basically be set for the rest of the minigame. It's just dreadfully boring, and you have to play these minigames every time you play this board. You get no options here. Bowser Station has ideas that I genuinely respect, but its refusal to fully commit to those ideas leaves us with a board that feels very segmented and incoherent. Toad Road is our starter board here, with a World 1 feel in both its aesthetic and its mechanics. Unlike the other boards in the game, Toad Road doesn't have much in the way of a central mechanic, and instead relies on some pretty simple board events to introduce players to the new card gameplay formula as a whole. The first unique lucky space that you can come across is by this vine here, which functions very similarly to the blue pipe lucky spaces that can be found on a variety of other boards, including this this one. However, unlike those events where you'll roll a number and get whatever amount of mini stars you land on, this event gives you 2 mini stars per space you roll. Okay. After the mini boss, you'll be stopped in front of this bridge. If you can collectively roll a 16 with 3 regular dice blocks and 1 through 10 dice block, you'll make it over to the other side with mini star spaces. If you can't make it, you'll fall down to the section beneath the bridge with mini star spaces. Okay, this is kind of a whatever event. I mean, it's just luck with rolling dice, so it's not like the players can have any sort of tangible input on the outcome here. I feel like a pretty simple solution to this that gives players more input is to just allow them to choose to use a special dice block from their inventory. That way, you can collectively put together high rolling items to clear the bridge, or somebody could choose to be BM and use the 0 to 1 dice block to sabotage the group. However, to really incentivize these decisions, the sections that precede the bridge would have to be more interesting than a 6-space strip of mini star spaces. Moving on, next we get to the captain event on 9 Island, this island shaped like a 9. Subtle. Here, the captain will choose the order in which players will roll, and whoever is piloting the car when it reaches the end of 9 Island will receive the jackpot of 10 mini stars. This captain event is okay. It does a good job of introducing the captain events, and the captain actually gets a good bit of input and decision-making opportunities here, with the potential for good luck to thwart their plans. It doesn't overstay its welcome too much either, but it's just not very interesting and the stakes aren't super high, so it does its job but doesn't really go that extra mile to be particularly memorable. After this, you'll reach a section of the board with 2 paths that wrap around an island. If you hit the happening spaces on these mushrooms, you'll be sent onto the island where players will roll infinitely and get mini stars until another player lands on the happening space to leave. This is fine and all, but runs the risk of severely harshing the game's tempo by trapping players in an infinite. Overall, there's not much to talk about with Toad Road because its events are very basic and tame. Obviously, it's a starter board, so that's kind of its thing, but this series has had significantly more interesting starter boards that manage to be just as interesting as the other boards in the game. However, Toad Road has the flavor of biting into a sandwich comprised of just 2 slices of white bread. Blooper Beach is probably my favorite board in the game from an aesthetic perspective, but that's probably just because of my beach level bias. When the map begins, a dolphin appears a few spaces ahead of the boat, moving 2 spaces every turn. If a captain catches up to them, they'll receive 5 mini stars. However, once the dolphin gets caught, a sushi will appear behind the players and move 4 spaces per turn. If the sushi catches up to the boat, they will take half of the captain's mini stars. This mechanic, similarly to the Bob-omb, is a pretty nice little bit of interactivity between players that also gives lots of value to special dice blocks. Taking half of your mini stars isn't too bad of a punishment either at the beginning of the board. Overall, I think that this is a good mechanic. After the mini boss, you approach one of the funniest junctions in the game, with one brief path filled with spin spaces and one filled with minigame spaces. I love this junction ironically because it just feels so strange and out of place. And if you go down the minigame route and roll low, you can be here for a long time. It's hard to articulate why I find this particularly unremarkable part of the board so fascinating. I think it's just unnatural and bizarre, as if the designers felt like they needed to stuff interesting spaces into this midpoint of the board to prevent it from being boring. Anyways, moving on to the captain event. In this event, players will be trying to pull up sunken treasure within 3 turns. If you land on an unlucky space, a fishbones will come through and knock 5 mini stars out of your basket. If you make it out of the water in those 3 turns, you get to keep the mini stars that are in your basket, but if you don't make it out, you get nothing. The captain gets a better route with less unlucky spaces and gets to choose which dice block you use each turn. This captain event, like many others in this game, is luck heavy and boring. If you roll high, you win. If you roll low, you lose. The captain also gets very little strategic input here, and to offset this, the game just gives them a better path, which is a lazy way to tip the scales in the captain's favor. This event is such a slog to get through too, forcing all players to watch each other roll one by one. This could have been so much more efficient if we just all rolled at once. I mean, we all move at the same time, so why do we have to zoom in and out at every player rolling? Ugh. After the captain event, the board is littered with happening spaces, and when a player lands on one, these crabs will shoot at the board, turning all mini stars into mini stars until another player lands on another happening space. This is a pretty neat mechanic. It's not doing anything particularly amazing or anything, but I like the push and pull of the mini-stars changing back and forth. It's kind of like what DK's Jungle Ruins wanted to do with shuffling bananas around, but Blooper Beach does this significantly better, probably due in part to the size of the board and the static mini-star pickup spots. In the beginning of this second half of the board, these two unlucky spaces will catch players into a whirlpool surrounding this blooper statue. After every roll, the whirlpool will drag you backwards 2 spaces to make it more challenging to escape the mini-star spaces. It kind of reminds me of the infinites from boards like Bowser Land in Mario Party 2 or Bowser Nightmare in Mario Party 5, although this is not nearly as frustrating because it's not technically an infinite. You'll eventually escape as long as you're not exclusively rolling 1s and 2s, but it's still pretty challenging to escape. It takes a toll on the game's tempo and really punishes you, but I think that's kind of the point. Inversely, towards the end of the board, there are a couple of lucky spaces that take you over to this star-shaped island very similar in function to the circular infinite from Toad Road, where the car will circle around until you land on the space to leave. Like that other event, this is fine, but poses a threat to the game's tempo by introducing an infinite that can trap players here for a long while. Backing up a bit, there's a junction right after the blooper statue that gives the captain a small choice. These paths are pretty similar, all things considered, but the bottom path also has a second version of the captain event from earlier with more mini-stars available to win. So if you want to, you can run it back. Blooper Beach is an alright board with some good ideas and some not so good ideas, and there's not much to really say about it beyond that. Boo's Horror Castle takes some of the ideas from Blooper Beach and makes them just a little bit more interesting. Boo's Horror Castle borrows the sushi mechanic from the previous board, with boos following you once you pass by their painting. If they catch up to you, they'll steal half of the captain's mini-stars. However, it is possible for multiple boos to chase you at once later in the board, and if multiple boos catch you, they'll steal even more of your mini-stars. This turns what was already a punishing event into a critical hit for whoever was unlucky enough to get hit by the boos, which makes this mechanic actually scary and really impactful. I honestly like it a lot. Additionally, there are these little detours along the path into well-lit rooms that boos will not enter, so you can duck out of the way and be safe from danger for a bit. However, the boos will still move 3 spaces every turn, so this can actually create scenarios where the boo is in front of the players, and instead of wanting to roll high to escape them, you want to roll low to avoid running into them. It does a really neat job of flipping the relatively straightforward sushi mechanic on its head and gives a lot of value to low rolling dice blocks. Well, if you were lucky enough to get one in this situation, that is. Inside of these safe rooms, there's a happening space in front of a jar, and landing here will teleport you to the jar outside of the safe room and vice versa. Outside of the final house, you will run into the Scaredy Rat Race, the captain event for this board. In this event, the Scaredy Rat will steal mini-stars from all of the players, and you will have to try to roll into them to get them back. The captain decides the order in which the players roll. This event is whatever. I feel like a broken record saying this again, but this captain event is just very boring, drawn out, minimally impactful, and luck heavy. It's truly remarkable just how padded these events make the board gameplay feel, and the events themselves are so drab and unremarkable that I just find myself begging for them to be over. With that event done, we get to the final room of the board, which takes a little bit of inspiration from Wii Party again, this time from Board Game Island. The gate to the boss initially has the number 6 on it, and so you have to roll a 6 to pass. In the very likely chance that you don't get that number, you'll have to go back around this loop to try again, but the number that you have to roll will decrease by 2. This loop right here is this board's Achilles heel. Up until the captain event, I've honestly had very little to actually criticize on this board, because its ideas are genuinely fun and some of the better usage of the car mechanic in this game. However, this last loop is such blatant padding, and the pacing of the game slams into a fortified brick wall. This loop is filled with backspaces, Bowser spaces, and battle spaces that certainly contribute to the padding at the end here. The thing that I dislike the most about this end gate is that it didn't have to suck and pad out the end of the board. It could have been yet another great opportunity for players to use items. If you've played Wii Party, you may remember that at the very end of Board Game Island, you also have to try to roll a 6 to reach the end and win. There are 2 extra layers that make Wii Party's implementation of the final gate much better. For starters, the game doesn't send you backward through a loop once you reach the end. As long as you don't get sent backward by another player, you'll start immediately at the gate on your next turn, cutting down the tedium significantly. However, most importantly, if you are at the gate and win a second die in the next minigame, you'll be able to use that dice to count towards your next roll at the gate. This is great because it directly rewards your skillful input in the minigames with a higher chance to roll what you need to win. So, if you get first place in the minigame, this bumps your chances of rolling at least a 6 up from 17% to a whopping 75.9% chance, greatly increasing the odds that you win the game. This gives players tangible input to increase their odds and encourages them to keep trying until the bitter end, and also encourages the other players to try to stop that winning player from placing highly in the minigame and increasing their odds. It's honestly great stuff, and Mario Party 9 could have done that, but it doesn't. Similarly, it could have at least allowed players to use special dice blocks here to increase their chances of passing through and getting the captain bonus. Or, if you're doing poorly, you could use a low rolling dice block to intentionally go back through the loop and try to buy yourself some time. There were a lot of routes that this ending area could have taken to make it more interesting, but as it sits, it's a terrible, festering blemish on what otherwise was a pretty neat board. Magma Mine is the best board in Mario Party 9, and I doubt that that's a particularly hot take. This board has a really good central gimmick that is punishing and makes the card gameplay shine the brightest that it can. At the start of this board, you begin by climbing up this volcano and reaching a junction. However, unlike other junctions in this game, the direction that you go is decided by committee rather than just by the captain. Every player gets a vote whether they want to go left or right, and then a wheel is spun to determine the direction that you'll go. I like this a lot. Making these decisions by voting makes the entire car feel a bit more engaged, gives players more opportunities to directly mess with each other, and works really well with the main mechanic, which we'll get into in a little bit. In this first circle, you'll encounter the captain event, which is chicken, pretty much. Players will roll, collecting mini stars along the way, but if you go over the edge, you'll lose every mini star that you collected. The captain's input here is critical because they determine when the event is over. This places a lot of power in the captain's hands because they can decide if they want to put everybody at risk to lose everything, but they might run the risk of ending everything too early and allowing the other players to walk away with more mini stars. As you can probably tell, I think that this is the best captain event in the game by far. It puts a ton of power into the captain's hands, it rewards risky play, it punishes losing harshly, and it doesn't take that long to complete. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. If I was to critique this, I'd say that all of the players should just roll at the same time, and it would probably benefit from some greater rewards closer to the cliff that would incentivize risk more. But honestly, this captain event is great. I really wish more of the captain events were like this one: snappy, impactful, and rewards risk. Along this beginning section of the board, there are a few happening spaces that will activate a flow of magma across the path, which will take half of the mini stars of the captain that passes through it. A fine event, but a bit of foreshadowing for what's coming later in the board. After the mini boss, the board's central mechanic kicks in, the rising magma. After every roll, the magma will rise 2 levels. If the magma rises to the level that you're on when you're captain, you'll lose half of your mini stars. There are also a ton of board exclusive spaces that will drastically increase the amount of levels that the magma rises, so you can try to land on one of these if you want to increase the chances that the person after you will get caught by the magma. This is the best central mechanic out of the boards in this game. The magma rising is impactful and ever present. Even the Boo's and Boo's Horror Castle would disappear after they hit someone, but the magma doesn't stop at just taking from one person. This also works well with the which way wheel junctions. If a player is close to getting hit by magma, the other players can vote to go in a direction where they wouldn't move vertically to increase the chances that their target gets hit. This is by far the most mileage the card gameplay gets in this game. This finally feels like an instance where players can have direct input on their opponents and their mini stars on the board, which is a lot of what Mario Party 9 is sorely lacking. My only real problem with this is that I wish the magma mechanic was around for longer. It's only really present between the mini boss and the home stretch, and after that you're back to business as usual, watching everybody else roll and not really caring what they get. All in all, Magma Mine does a really good job showcasing the best that the card gameplay has to offer. In totality, the boards in Mario Party 9 are just kind of okay. A lot of their flaws come more so from mechanical issues within the game as a whole, a lack of shops to purchase items, the captain events in general just interrupting the board too much, the card gameplay hampering decision-making opportunities, etc, etc. But boards like Magma Mine and Boo's Horror Castle demonstrate that the card gameplay, while inferior to the classic Mario Party formula, isn't completely without merit. There are genuinely interesting interesting ideas here that work well with the players grouped together like this, but I don't think that any of those ideas come close to the best of Mario Party's classic formula. I think that my largest problem with the boards in Mario Party 9 as a whole is that they don't commit to their central mechanics enough. On a lot of these boards, the central mechanic doesn't show up until halfway through the board after the mini-boss. This then gives the board's best idea and biggest differentiator less time to breathe, ramp up, and impact the game, which can often make these boards feel very repetitive and doesn't give them enough time to truly make the game interesting. It's entirely plausible that you could play through an entire game of Magma Mine and not get hit by the magma once. In some cases, like Blooper Beach and Boo's Horror Castle, the problem is the opposite, where the board will instead ditch a great mechanic from its first half too quickly in favor of something else, leaving both ideas without the space to grow. Committing to its best ideas and removing the unnecessary tedium and padding would have made these boards so much more interesting and highlighted their actually good qualities. It also would have been nice for there to be less repetition in mechanics here. Even though I like the sushi mechanic, having 3 boards built around the pursuing hazard mechanic is kind of repetitive, even if they are arguably the 3 best boards in the game. Maybe this shows that the team was really just getting used to this new gameplay formula, and more ideas will come in a sequel game with the car. Or, more likely, maybe this shows the mechanical limitations of stuffing all of the players into a minivan together. Anyways, I think we've talked about the board gameplay at great lengths here. Let's finally park the car and chat about minigames. So, for the minigames, I'll be rating them on my scale from 1 to 10 and finding the mean, median, and mode. This way, we can see how Mario Party 9's minigames stack up compared to the other Mario Party games. The score for each minigame will be on the bottom right corner of the screen as we discuss them. Mario Party 9 has 81 minigames in total, but we'll be omitting the 3 extra minigames from this list because they do not appear in board gameplay, knocking our list down to 78 total minigames. So, without further ado, let's get into each of the minigames that Mario Party 9 has to offer. Buddy Bounce is a really great minigame where players are incentivized to take risks and use the other players as a means to an end. Loggerheads is a classic reaction minigame with Wii Remote swings. Pinball Fall is a luck minigame that wants you to think that it's not. You just pick a ball and hope for the best, maybe waggle if you fall in a hole. Launch Break is mashing on a Wii Remote, debatably one of the worst mashing setups in the series. Goomba Village is kind of easy, but rewards picking fast and can get challenging if the winning house is determined by only 1 or 2 Goombas. Speeding Bullets is a really fun racing minigame that punishes mistakes harshly. Pianta Pool is cumbersome to control and is mostly determined by luck. Just hope that the Pianta throws the gold hoop near you. Chain Event is the good version of Flip the Chimp. It's faster, more responsive, and easier to actually react to the obstacles that are in front of you. Skyjinx looks like a fun platforming minigame, but it's so unbelievably easy and is over way too fast. In what circumstance would even a child need 3 hearts for this minigame? It's insulting. Skipping Class is an excellent input minigame that requires putting serious pressure on your friends to input as fast as you can to get more points, while also requiring perfect precision. It's incredibly tense and engaging. Mecha Choice is a luck minigame. Just pick a door and hope you don't get jumped. It's really boring and lags really badly on original hardware. Jigsaw Jumble requires players to assess the puzzle and find the right piece fast. It's a good time. Growing Up is a great reaction minigame that doesn't make you feel like a single mistake loses you the entire game. Everybody's engaged and competing until the bitter end. Upward Mobility is an inferior version of What Goes Up from Mario Party 6, but an inferior version of that minigame is still really fun. This one can come down to mere frames. Ringleader is a pretty easy timing minigame. Smash Compactor is a really cool idea, but iframes kind of spoil the fun a bit. I'd love to see what this minigame would be like with shorter iframes. Peak Precision is an accurately named minigame that encourages you to lock in and input fast. 10 to Win may look like a boring luck minigame, but since the different panels can benefit different groups of players, it's really fun watching what somebody else picks and popping off when it benefits you. This is a real sleeper hit amongst luck minigames in this series. Tuber Tug is awkward and might cause hand pain, but kind of simulates the action it's displaying well. So, good job, I think? Card Smarts is a really great outsmart your friends minigame where you'll try to bait your friends to use their high value cards early and sneak out a win in the end. Genuinely phenomenal. Toad and Go Seek is ambitious but really easy, so the real competition is trying to push your way to the front of the door like a Black Friday sale. Polar Extreme is like Skyjinx but slightly better, although falling in the water is like barely penalized. Goomba Bowling is a really neat little concept for a minigame. It doesn't have the same one-to-one feel as something like Wii Sports, but I respect the gumption. Tumble Temple takes a little bit too long to truly get challenging, but it's a fun minigame nonetheless. Twist Ending is fine generally. I like that overextending forces you to go all the way back around. Manner of Escape is a luck minigame that ultimately boils down to who can guess the last door correctly. Player Conveyor is a neat concept, but the warp pipes add a little bit too much luck for my tastes. I'd prefer that you be able to assess the correct path immediately rather than having to take a warp pipe and hope that it's the right one. Ballistic Beach is an interesting minigame that tests your depth perception, but you might be here for a little while. Bumper Bubbles is the perfect Mario Party minigame. It's competitive, encourages aggressive play, rewards you handsomely when you succeed, and punishes you relentlessly when you fail. It's a masterclass in good minigame design. Flinger Painting is a snappy and engaging Splatoon minigame. Bomb Barge is intense and unpredictable. Nowhere is safe, and I honestly love that about this minigame. I just wish that it didn't reward avoidant play as much as it does. Don't Look would be so much better if it wasn't motion controlled. Unless if you have played this minigame tons of times to understand the controls quirks, it's really easy to look in a different direction than the way that you swing the Wii remote. Snow Go is like Later Skater but with a little ramp. Neat. Piranha Patch. Oh boy, I sure do hope that the flowers spawn near me. Plunder Ground is so easy, even a toddler wouldn't lose track of the winning chests. Peer Pressure is a cute luck minigame, but tends to drag a lot. Ballistics is a classic bullet hell minigame. Pit or Platter is a fantastic example of motion controls done right. It also rewards careful, considerate play. Thwomper Room is a neat concept, but it's a little too easy for all players to survive. Jumping is a death sentence. Earn It requires quick pattern recognition, reaction, and commitment to your answer to get the most points. A really fun one that looks unassuming. Goomba Spotting is a Goomba-themed reskin of Commuter Count from Wii Party. Magma Mayhem is a fairly typical King of the Hill minigame. One kick and you're off the platform. Pizza Me Mario is a timing minigame with motion controls that actually work fairly well. Fungi Frenzy. Boy, I sure do hope that the triple mushrooms spawn near me. Ruins Rumble looks like a lot of fun, but the one's vehicle goes way too fast. You'd have to really try to lose. Hazard Hold is a fun idea, but it's slightly weighted towards the team. Line in the Sand is a really neat concept, but is way too easy for the one. Block and Roll would be easy for the one if they had half the amount of time. Tackle Takedown is extremely weighted towards the one. 3 dashes is just way too much. Weird Wheels is a solid reaction minigame that is pretty fairly balanced. Spike and Span has a really fun Mario-y feel, but is just way too easy for the 3. Whole Hogs is a really cute minigame that is too hard for the 1. Pix Fix is, again, way too easy for the 1. Mob Sleds is a really clever idea that requires some good team coordination for the 3. Mecha March requires some good coordination, but is still kind of easy to win. Bowser Pop is really easy, but does require a little bit of communication between the teammates. Double Pounder is insultingly easy. Zoom Room is also insultingly easy. Somehow it's more of a snooze fest than Flash and Dash, which is an accomplishment, honestly. Cage Match is a nice little throwback to Super Mario World, but get this, it's too easy. Crossfire Caverns is like Lava Lobbers from Mario Party 8, but it lacks the competitive edge. Also, it's really easy. Bumper Sparks is a cute idea that would work so much better as a free-for-all. As a Bowser Jr. minigame, believe it or not, it's just too easy. Sand Trap requires some good team coordination and is honestly a pretty neat idea. Pair of Aces is a fun little light gun minigame, but the hazards don't matter because you can flip forever and there isn't anything to aim at besides Bowser Jr. Pedal to the Paddle is way too easy. Shocking, I know. Socket to Lakitu is a pretty decent boss minigame. The final attack is kind of impactful, but not always game-defining. I like this one. Womp Stomp involves some really great mind games and planning. If you're the platform right before the Womp, you'll get a small window to score a bit more than the other players, which is pretty huge. The final attack bonus is way too impactful in this minigame though. Deck Dry Bones is a card minigame that is way too easy. It's entirely plausible that the players all tie in this one because nobody missed a card. Also, the final attack bonus can often be game-defining, which is bad. Cheap Cheap Shot is a little on-rails shooting minigame that is honestly pretty fun. The final attack bonus can be impactful, but isn't always game-defining, which I appreciate. Spike Strike is a cute reaction minigame, but the final hammer matters way too much. If you get the last golden hammer, you get 6 points, which is essentially game-defining for this minigame. It really makes the majority of the game feel like it doesn't matter. Bowser Jr. Breakdown is really weak, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's entirely luck-based and drags on for forever. Diddy's Banana Blast is a classic DK Barrel Blast situation. It's fine, if not a bit boring. Wiggler Bounce is a fun little boss minigame where you try to ground pound on Wiggler's body segments to do damage. It's fine enough, but there's very little threat or challenge here. Bombard King Babam is a really fun minigame in concept. I love these sorts of mind games minigames, but the final attack bonus matters way too much. You can win from a single bomb thanks to this bonus, which is just way too impactful. King Boo's Puzzle Attack is a Candy Crush puzzle minigame where you match the icons. It's pretty fun. Blooper Barrage is a classic monkey shot type minigame that works really well with the Wii Remote. The final attack bonus is impactful, but not always game defining. Chain Chomp Romp is a simple follow the paths minigame that is pretty easy, so the real challenge is reacting to which button you need to press. Unsurprisingly, the final attack bonus is way too impactful in this minigame too. Bowser's Block Battle is a really cute minigame thematically and definitely has its moments, but I just don't think that luck minigames really work in the boss format. DK's Banana Bonus. Oh boy, I sure do hope DK throws the big barrel towards me! And that's all of the minigames in Mario Party 9. Mario Party 9 has a mean score of 5.08, with a median of 5 and mode of 7. This places Mario Party 9 at spot number 8 on our list, behind Mario Party 2, but above Mario Party DS. Alright, let's talk about this. I'm honestly shocked at this game's placement on our rankings here. Mario Party 9 has an honestly fantastic set of 4-player minigames. Pitter Platter, Peak Precision, Skipping Class, Bumper Bubbles. There's honestly so many good 4-player minigames here that this mean score feels criminal. However, once you get to the other minigame types that this game has to offer, you start to see the cracks form, and they form fast. Boss minigames are generally pretty alright, depending on whether the final attack determines the game or not, but 1 vs. Rivals and Bowser Jr. minigames generally performed badly here. The 1 vs. Rivals or 1v3 minigames have always been a noticeable blemish in pretty much every Mario Party minigame set, but here they really stick out like a sore thumb, mostly favoring one side too often. The Bowser Jr. minigames, well, they're just weighted too much towards the players. You'd have to really try to lose these, and it makes me wonder why ND Cube opted to add these as a minigame type instead of classic Bowser minigames that involved all 4 players. Mario Party 9 is also missing a ton of staple minigame types, most notably 2v2s, a genre that has provided us with some incredible minigames in the series past. Mario Party 9 has some exceptional minigames, but its overwhelming amount of mediocre minigames knocks that score down much lower than it honestly should be. But if you're just jumping into minigames and playing the free-for-alls, you're bound to have a good time. Speaking of which, let's chat about some of the different minigame modes that Mario Party 9 has to offer. Mario Party 9, like its predecessors, offers a few different minigame modes to check out. One of Wii Party's strongest traits was the various ways that it packaged minigames into different minigame modes that were quick, snappy, and put the minigames front and center. The minigame modes in Mario Party have generally been fine, but more like an afterthought, so let's see how Mario Party 9 fares. First, we've got Step It Up, your typical win 3, 5, or 7 minigames mode that has existed since Mario Party 2. Next up, we've got Choice Challenge. In this mode, each player will quietly pick 3 out of 5 minigames on their Wii Remote that they want to play. If 2 or more people choose the same minigame, they will compete and the winner will get 100 points, second place will get 50, third place will get 30, and fourth place will get 10. However, if you're the only player to pick a minigame, you'll receive 100 points by default, so it can be beneficial to pick an unpopular minigame in the hopes that nobody else picks it. Finally, there's a designated chance minigame that will award the first place player with 150 points. Choice Challenge is very different from any other Mario Party minigame mode, and I respect it for trying something new, but this mode just lacks flavor. Trying to outsmart your friends and pick minigames that you either think that you can win or think that they won't pick is kinda cute, but you won't be participating in every minigame, so there will be a lot of downtime for players. It's fine if you want to change a pace, but I rarely feel a desire to play Choice Challenge. Coming up next is High Rollers. High Rollers is a neat mode where you'll get to roll over tiles depending on how you perform in minigames, with first place getting to move 4 spaces, 3 spaces for second, 2 for third, and 1 for fourth. Every time you roll over a tile, it decreases in value by 10 points until it reaches 0, and then Toad will reset it back to 30. The POW block in the center will also decrease the tiles by 10 if a player rolls over it. If there's a large gap in scores, Toad may give you a boost item which you can use to score more points and potentially knock a player off the board, preventing them from taking a turn. The first player who reaches 500 points wins. High Rollers is a pretty good mode. The setup is a little slow, but I do enjoy the emphasis that it places on positioning and strategic movement. I just think it overstays its welcome. 500 points is just too high of a threshold in my opinion, and this mode's charm doesn't carry it all the way through that runtime. It probably would have been better if you could set score limits for how long you wanted to play, say 300, 500, or 700. Up next, we've got Boss Rush, which is... Yep, it's a boss rush, surprise, surprise. Overall, the minigame modes in this game don't really stick out compared to the rest of the series. That is, well, with one exception. Garden Battle is one of the best minigame modes in Mario Party. In this mode, players need to fill their garden with plants. Toad will wheel in a group of oddly arranged seedlings, and players will take turns selecting a plant group in an order determined by minigame placement. This mode is fantastic because it rewards skilled players with the opportunity to choose their plants first and fill up their garden faster. But just winning the minigame doesn't guarantee you a win overall, because the other players may be smarter with their plant placement and fill up their garden more reliably. There are a lot of seedlings on offer that may take up more space and seem like the obvious choice, but the neater line of seedlings that doesn't create an orphan space on your board might wind up being the better pick. Placing well in minigames doesn't guarantee you victory, but it does guarantee you first dibs at decision making. This really ramps up in the late game, where you'll likely want to try to win the minigame to snag a seedling that another player needs to fill a specific spot in their garden. Garden Battle is, to me, what a good minigame mode should be. A creative repackaging of minigames that recontextualizes them as not just games to be won, but also a means to an end in a larger strategy, even if that strategy is as simple as filling in a flower bed. Mario Party 9 does also have a decathlon-style mode called Time Attack, but just like Mario Party 8, it's locked to single player. Why, ND Cube? This is extra disappointing because Time Attack introduces bonus objectives that will remove time from your score if you complete them, which is such a genius idea. If this mode was multiplayer, it would easily be one of the best renditions of the decathlon minigame mode. Overall, Mario Party 9 has some great minigame modes like Garden Battle, but it's not as much of a step up from the previous games that I had honestly hoped that it would be, especially following Wii Party and its focus on smaller minigame modes that kept its minigames fresh. Before we wrap up, Mario Party 9 has a couple of extra minigames that are worth mentioning. Castle Clear Out is a Puyo Puyo-esque puzzle minigame where your goal is to match chains of same-colored marbles. The single-player version of this minigame is more of a level clear structure, but there is a two-player mode where you'll try to survive longer than your opponent. If you match marbles in a pyramid, line, or hexagon, you'll send a bunch of marbles over to your opponent's side. It's a neat little puzzle minigame, probably not my favorite in the series or anything, but it's a fun distraction. Next up is Shell Soccer, a 2v2 minigame where you play soccer and try to murder the other side's Goombas. It's a pretty fun little minigame and almost makes me think that 2v2 minigames may have been planned for this game at some point. There's also a version of Goomba Bowling that allows you to play 5 frames with traditional bowling rules, which is pretty neat. And finally, there's Perspective Mode, a single-player challenge mode that allows you to play 10 minigames with the camera zoomed in behind your character like in a third-person platforming game. This makes some minigames really challenging and some feel a little different, but it's honestly nothing to write home about. You'll probably spend a few minutes in here playing these minigames, saying, alright, and then ducking out, never to touch this mode again. But honestly, that's all of the extra content that this game has to offer. Outside of Castle Clear Out, there's not a lot here that's really worth opening this menu for. So, let's chat about Mario Party 9's beginner friendliness. Mario Party 9 has a lot going for it in terms of beginner friendliness. For starters, I think an aspect of this game that kind of goes unappreciated is that you can play with any number of 2 to 4 players in both the main party mode and the minigames, and the game will adjust the balance accordingly so you don't have to have CPUs. While it's fun sometimes to have a CPU fill in the gaps when playing with friends, it's also nice having the option to not have a CPU in the ranks that forces every human player to sit back and do nothing for a little while. Mario Party 9 does streamline a lot of the process, so if somebody is entirely new to Mario Party or even video games in general, it's very unlikely that they will be confused by the utility of the items or the overall objective of the game. However, some of that streamlining comes at the cost of strategy and engaging gameplay, and it's fairly common for people to get bored with Mario Party 9 very quickly, at least in my experience. Because of this, I'm going to give Mario Party 9 3 stars on my beginner friendliness meter. It's very intentionally beginner focused, so it's likely very easy for newcomers to gather what their objective is pretty quickly. The challenge is keeping them engaged throughout the entirety of the game. If you're going to play Mario Party 9 with newcomers, my recommendation would be to play on Blooper Beach or Magma Mine. Blooper Beach will give you that feel of a typical Mario Party 9 board with some interesting mechanics, while Magma Mine is easily the best board in the game. Boo's Horror Castle is a decent choice too, but that final area might be a real vibe killer. Mario Party 9 is a really interesting game to look at in retrospect. It marks a completely new era for Mario Party, and not in a good way. I think ND Cube really hoped that Mario Party 9 would be a long-lasting, permanent shift in design philosophy for this series, a way out of the ruts that they had found themselves in during their time at Hudson Soft. So, the developers likely wanted to take the various lessons that they learned about party game design from Wii Party and apply it to Mario Party in a way that tries to not deviate too much from the series past. But unfortunately, this wound up in a rocky middle ground that didn't really capture the best elements of what either direction had to offer. Classic Mario Party is a party game built on strategy and making decisions while factoring in probability. Wii Party is a party game built on snappy, minigame-centered modes and diverse experiences that repackage those minigames into distinct, unique gameplay modes that you can't really get anywhere else. Mario Party 9 is a milquetoast game built on de-emphasizing both minigames and player autonomy, capturing players on a guided tour through the board with minimal input on their outcomes. This isn't to say that Mario Party 9 is without any merits or genuinely good ideas. It certainly has some of those, but those ideas are few and far between, and when they do show up, Mario Party 9 is not willing to commit to them and let them build in a way that feels engaging and impactful before the board inevitably ends. There's just too much in this game that feels out of your hands and inconsequential that it's hard to keep an entire room interested for the entire road trip. I respect Mario Party 9 and ND Cube for being bold enough to try something brand new with this long-running series, but in that process, I think they lost sight of what made classic Mario Party such a powerhouse in the party game genre. Mario Party 9 sits between Mario Party 5 and Mario Party 1 on my series ranking thus far. I definitely don't think that Mario Party 9's formula has anything on Mario Party 5, but I do think that Mario Party 9 has significantly stronger minigames than 1, it's got stronger minigame modes, and I think that beginners would have way more fun with Mario Party 9 than with Mario Party 1. I do think that there's an argument to be made here that some of Mario Party 1's better moments outshine some of Mario Party 9's, but generally, as a complete package, I think that Mario Party 9 is the better game. Mario Party 9 is not the worst game in this series, but its direction just didn't quite give the series the breath of new life it was hoping for. So, where do we go from here? Well, on the next episode of Mark's Rec Room, we're going back to handhelds to discuss Mario Party Island Tour, the first entry on the 3DS that clearly has some self-discovering to do. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Hey, thanks for watching this excessively nerdy video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and hopefully it was worth the wait. Whether you're a new viewer or a returning viewer, thanks so much for watching my videos. It's super encouraging that people enjoy the videos that I put out, and the fact that you're here at all is unfathomable to me. I'm hoping to make 2025 a big year for the channel, and as the first step of that, I decided to open up channel memberships. So, if you want to support me and get some perks like your name in the credits here, watching videos early or just some cute Mario Party themed emotes to use in live chats, feel free to click that join button down below and become a bonus star. At least I think that's what I'm gonna call my members. If you can't become a member, that's totally fine. Just watching, liking, and subscribing is immensely valuable too, and I appreciate you being here. Anyways, thanks again for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.